Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLuga. Thanks so much for tuning in here. Wednesday, May 14th, third show of the day for y'all. And this one is the big one, the Jaguars 2025 schedule release reaction. Now, the schedule release video this year featuring Ashton Hall, not as inspiring as some of the ones in years past. I'll say that. But nonetheless, we're here to react more to the actual schedule than the schedule video. And the schedule for the Jaguars overall, we've talked about it a lot already. They're playing the AFC West. They're playing the NFC West. So there's a lot of games on the West Coast, which means there's more 4 o'clock games for the Jaguars than normal. But we're going to dive into it right here. We'll roll through the schedule. So it's versus Panthers in week 1. It's at Bengals in week 2. It's versus Texans in week 3. At 49ers in week 4 versus the Chiefs on Monday Night Football in Jacksonville. That's going to be awesome, right? Then versus Seattle in Jax versus the Rams in London. That's going to be a 9:30 a.m. game. And so you have the Chiefs game, Monday Night Football, week 5. Obviously, that's prime time. London morning games, not technically prime time, but only game on, so that's cool. Then you do get the week 8 bye following that. Week 9, Jaguars at Raiders, 4 p.m. So you have the 49ers and the Raiders at 4 p.m. Then you have at Houston. You have versus Chargers. You have at Arizona, again at 4 p.m. At Tennessee versus Indy versus the New York Jets. At Denver, 4 p.m. At Indy, and then versus the Titans to close it out. My big takeaways from this schedule. Again, one real primetime game. That's not completely shocking. It's very cool that it's against the Chiefs. Just, hosting the Chiefs is a big deal on Monday Night Football. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And it's October 6th. So you look at that. That's one of those weeks where if it's a home game, there's the potential for it to be very, very hot if that's a 1 p.m. Sunday kickoff. So the fact that it's Monday night, I think is definitely good for fans from a weather perspective, but also just hosting the Chiefs in that type of environment, that will be pretty electric Monday Night Football matchup. We've talked about the Rams matchup because we already knew about it in London. It's a big one. There's so many connections between the Jaguars and the Rams. James Gladstone coming over, bringing a lot of their staff, front office staff, and Liam Cohen, obviously, former offensive assistant there multiple times. He coached under Sean McVay with the Los Angeles Rams. So that's a huge matchup there. I think that it's awesome to see the week 8 bye for a couple reasons. I think if you're only playing one game in London, which the Jaguars are only playing one game in London this year for the first time in a while, having the bye week after that is pretty big, and the fact that it's week 8. You have that. I think week 8, week 9 is really the ideal time to have a bye in this modern schedule where you have 17 games, 18 weeks. And I think having it after London is going to be good for, yes, this organization has been through the London trip quite a bit, but this team, this regime hasn't done it together. So to have the bye week to kind of bounce back after that, I think is pretty big. Looking throughout the rest of the teams on the Jaguars schedule, I believe the only team that has a bye week before playing the Jaguars is the Raiders. But the Jaguars also have a bye week in week 8. So that's not really going to be an advantage for either team, which I think is very good. A lot of times when you have a bunch of teams that have bye weeks prior to playing you, you feel like they might be a little bit more rested, a little bit more prepared for that game. That will not be the case for the Jaguars here this year. And I like the fact that Monday night is before a home game, right? You have this heightened environment against the Chiefs. Monday Night Football, it would be really tough to turn around and then have to go on the road the following weekend and play on Sunday, but they get to host the Seahawks. So I think that's big. And then you travel out to take on the Rams in London right after that, and then you get your bye week. So that's a big stretch. I think one of the things I always talk about looking at the schedule is the stretches of games. Like, where could they have potential pitfalls? Where could they have a stretch of games where they really pile up some W's? And we don't know. No one really knows what this Jacksonville Jaguars team is going to look like. We can prognosticate, we can think about it, we can talk about it, we can take examples of what Liam Cohen's done, of what the different personnel on both sides of the ball has done in the past, on how this thing is shaping out, on adding Travis Hunter and having Brian Thomas Jr. and believing that you're going to have a good passing attack. But we don't know. We haven't seen this group together at all. But just based on kind of my thoughts on the NFL and the teams that they're facing this year, I look at kind of, week 2 to week 12 as a stretch where I don't think they're going to have like piling up losses after loss after loss after loss, but I do think they're going to lose their fair share of games between week 2 and week 12. Look, you play at Cincinnati. I know everybody talks about Cincinnati struggling early in the season and they've got their situation with Trey Hendrickson, but that's a tough assignment for a new football team. It was a really tough assignment. The Bengals, they believe that they've improved their defense. We'll see if they actually have. But no matter what, it's difficult to deal with that offense. It absolutely is. At 49ers, another team, the Bengals and 49ers are two teams that have been at the top of the league, but kind of fell back down to earth a little bit recently. The 49ers did not have a very good year last year, but I think that they're poised to be a tough matchup in San Francisco in week 4. Obviously, I think that anytime you play the Chiefs, no matter where you're playing them, when you're playing them, that is probably pencil that in for an L on the schedule. I think the Rams, that's going to be a tough one for the Jaguars to get a win against the Rams in London. So then you talk about at Vegas, I think is winnable. But Vegas is going to be a tough team. They're going to be much tougher than they have been in the past. Much better coached, better offense. Geno Smith coming in, some big-time offensive weapons, Genty, Brock Bowers, etc., Jack Besh. You have at Houston, and that's a tough place for the Jaguars to go win football games, as we all know. The Chargers are going to come in here to Jacksonville and be a tough out. They're going to be a really tough football team. And then at Arizona. So that's just some really tough road games. At Arizona, who I think has a chance to be a playoff caliber team. At Houston, who we know has been a playoff caliber team. At Vegas, who has a chance to be a playoff caliber team. In London against the Rams, a playoff caliber team. Against the Chiefs, Super Bowl caliber team. At the 49ers, definitely a team that has the potential to be upper echelon. And at Bengals. So that's just a tough weeks 2 through 12. I think the Jaguars are probably going to have a losing record during that stretch. But similar to last year, I think weeks 13 through 18 present a huge opportunity because you've got the Titans twice in that stretch. You've got the Colts twice in that stretch. You also play the Jets at home. To end the year, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of your last 6 games are against divisional opponents. And you've also got a home game against the Jets. Realistically, I think you could potentially have on paper the Jaguars winning 5 of their last 6. I wouldn't predict them to win in Denver this year. That's going to be a really tough environment to play in. Could be cool for Travis Hunter going back to Colorado, though. So that's kind of how I view it. Tough meat of the schedule. Very tough. But down the stretch, if you have yourself in position to compete, to be, flirting with the playoffs, you could have a run there at the end of the season. You could have a run starting in week 13, in my opinion. And obviously, we don't know how these things are going to go. We don't know what injuries are going to take place on the Jags or other teams. So it's all really a crapshoot. But just based on my early thinking about this schedule, I have them going 4-2 in their division, with 1-1 against the Texans, and then sweeping either the Titans or the Colts, and then going 1-1 against the other team. I have them 2-2 against the NFC West. So I have them losing in San Francisco. I have them winning at home against Seattle. I have them losing in London against the Rams. And then I have them losing in Arizona against I have 1-3 against the NFC West, not 2-2. 1-3 against the NFC West, losing at Arizona. So that's tough because your home game against the Rams technically is not at home. And then you play the 49ers on the road, you play the Cardinals on the road, you get Seattle at home. So that's who I'm taking them to beat, is Seattle in that division. I've got them 2-2 against the AFC West. The Chiefs, I have them losing to. I have them beating the Raiders in Vegas. That's their one big road win out west that I have them able to achieve. I have them beating the Chargers in Jacksonville, and then I have them losing to the Broncos in Denver. So again, 1-3 against the NFC West, 2-2 against the AFC West, 4-2 in their own division. Then I have them with wins over the New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers in Jacksonville to finish the season 9-8. Will that be enough to get them into the playoffs? Will that be enough to potentially win the division? It's going to be really fun to find out. But before the actual schedule came out and we just knew who the opponents were, I had them 9-8. Nothing has really changed here for me. I think that their ceiling is probably maybe 11 wins. I think their floor probably 7-ish wins. So that's where I'm at with the 2025 Jaguars after the schedule. Very exciting to see the Chiefs come into town on Monday Night Football. Again, playing the Rams in London will be really cool. And teams that the Jaguars get to see, or that Jaguars fans get to see, again, in Jacksonville, the Chiefs, obviously the divisional opponents. The Jets and Panthers probably aren't two of the bigger draws for Jaguars fans, like of a massive show coming into town, right? But I think that playing the Panthers in week 1, 30 years after both teams kicked off their franchises in 1995, I think is pretty cool. The battle of the big cats in week 1, Bryce Young coming to town. They've added a lot to their roster over the last couple years to make themselves more competitive. That should be a fun game. And looking at some of the other teams you play, obviously the Chiefs is going to be wild Monday Night Football. Seattle coming to town. That's going to be interesting with their new look offense. Sam Darnold, they got rid of Geno. They got rid of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. That's going to be a very, very different Seattle Seahawks offense. The Chargers coming here. You know what happened last time the Chargers came to Jacksonville. And then the Jets, they're going to be a tough smash mouth football team. They really did a good job, in my opinion, addressing both lines of scrimmage, which is no surprise with Aaron Glenn coming from Detroit. But Justin Fields and that passing offense, we'll see how that ends up working out there. And then obviously wrapping up the season against the Titans in Jacksonville, I think is good for the Jaguars and good for Jaguars fans. That game has the potential to be very meaningful, and all those late season divisional games could be huge for the Jaguars. 9-8 is my official record prediction as of right now. We'll dive into more of the specific matchups later on. Probably tomorrow we'll have a little bit of fun doing that, looking at kind of matchups that I think might determine some of these football games. But that'll do it here for this schedule reaction for the Jaguars. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. Y'all have a good one.